This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. All right. Good morning, Kelly.
What do we got today? What's going on today?
Well, let's see. We will start off with kind of a slew of articles that pertain to the same thing. I will start off with...
As you're doing that, let me just give a quick little introduction about what we're going to do today and set up the context. So we're mid-November right now, a little bit past mid-November. So we're getting ready for the holiday seasons. And we've talked about this on the podcast quite a bit, but it bears reminding people the holidays tend to produce the highest concentration of violent acts within our schools. Immediately following the holidays and within that 2-week period after they get back is our most vulnerable period. So that's kind of what the context of what it is that we're going to be talking about today. And we have several articles that are going to help us along there.
I'll start off with the walkout article. I'm going to not name the district. So basically last week, so there was a shooting, 2 shootings last week in the same area, which then prompted a walkout yesterday on November 18th, basically in protest of gun violence, essentially. You don't see these really too often where, you have an entire group of students doing a walkout, but we have seen it before, for sure.
Was part of that article about eliminating the school violence program? Did I get that wrong? Or was it just protest?
So that's kind of in tandem. I haven't seen... I think this may have been specific to just the students being tired of being in an environment where they're seeing this kind of violence, but then I think... I honestly can't... Let's see. That was on the 18th yesterday. And this other article that we're going to talk about was also on the 18th. Well, that makes it confusing.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's at 5. This one doesn't have a time. So they're both on the same day, so it's kind of hard to tell which one came first.
Yeah.
Honestly, but I'm just assuming they kind of go hand in hand. I think it's valid to assume that maybe the students heard of this program being cut.
It involves the same district, though, right?
Same district. So
yep.
In the same district, there's another article that I'll say it that they're essentially, much like every other school, they're facing some type of budget cut, and they're considering cutting out what appears to be like an external school violence prevention program, just cutting it out of the budget, and then trying to basically do that type of program in-house. So it was funded by, I think it's kind of like the city, a city program. So the city would choose certain schools to provide funding for a program, and then the district, knowing that this high school wasn't part of that list, use their funding to basically have an outside school violence prevention program come in because they had a good relationship with them prior.
Yep.
To help with that. And so now they're faced with budget cuts, and now they're
trying to figure that out. So there's a couple of things to unpack here, right? Let's talk about the students walking out. And so a group of students walking out to protest something it used to be unheard of back in my day. We never saw that. And as protests became the way of communication between a group of people and the powers to be, became the accepted and encouraged, you should walk out, you should do this. We see more and more of this. So as safety professionals, that creates a whole slew of new issues that we have to deal with.
I mean, right at that time, where even right when they're walking out, they're saying the kids were just walking down the road. And they're like, no, come back. And it's like, how do you stop an entire crowd of kids from.
And so that's the issue is, they're responsible. The school is responsible for their safety. So if you're going to allow them to do that, or you're being forced to allow them to do that because you can't stop 3,000 kids from walking and so forth, what steps are you taking to keep them safe? Right? Sometimes that's a coordinated thing between the student body and the school saying, "Hey, we're going to do this, so just so you know." Sometimes it's spontaneous, and you might have some of the leaders, whether their intentions are good or ill intended, they might run up and down the halls yelling, we're walking, we're walking." And they might have had that all planned out and have this sort of flash mob mentality.
Mm,
So, when you talk about all hazards and being able to cope with that, this now becomes part of that. If you have a student body that is likely to protest, what measures are you taking? Who do you contact? Are you contacting the police departments? Are you contacting the administration buildings, the superintendent saying, "Hey, we're having this walkout"? What is the guidance? What is the management, the oversight? What do you do with the kids that don't walk out? If you have the vast majority, if you have 75% of your kids walking out and protesting, and then you have 25% staying back, but you need 100% of your staff to keep your 75% safe, what are you doing with the 25%? Right?
mm.
So it's those types of things that we have to start considering, right? So that's the walkout.
So I guess my one question is, I find it interesting that you have a group of students that are protesting, violence, right? Gun violence. The gun violence that they're seeing is
Student led.
led by a student. I think there's this like culture within our generation that's you need to take some responsibility, right? It's, don't I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. It's
So
you
here's
know,
the issue. The problem that they're identifying is a problem that's caused by them,
right.
right? So they have the solution. The problem is they don't have the tools to solve that, right?
Mm,
They have no authority. They can help through peer groups. They can help by reporting it to adults. They can help by getting involved in school safety, understanding the prevention mitigation, how to prepare themselves, all of those things that we're talking about with their teachers. But you're right to bring this up. They're saying stop the gun violence, stop this from happening, but it's happening within their group, their peers, right? These are students that are bringing the guns. These are students who are committing the acts of violence. These are students who are, and this might bleed into the main body of what we're saying.
yeah.
This phrase is overused. School safety is a shared responsibility. We've really usually meant to have that at the adult level, but it really
Right.
is the responsibility of the students to help us prevent it by notifying us, by
Mm,
talking to their peers, by supporting their peers in a positive way. I'll leave it with this. Sometimes it's not what's being said, it's who's saying it. I could come up with, and what I mean by that is I could come up with this great program or this great statement or positive reinforcement for something as an adult, especially as a 62-year-old adult. But when one of their peers say it, and it could be completely disregarded, it can be have pushback, it could have all kinds of things, right? But one of their peers says the exact same thing. Yeah, that's the best thing I've ever heard. Right? So we have to understand that dynamic. I used to hear it all the time, right? Or experience it all the time when I would say something and then the sheriff would come in and say it and everyone would say, "That's a great idea. It's the exact same idea that I just said." Right?
You just
But
articulated it better.
well, well, and he's got more authority.
Are you saying the students have authority?
They have some authority. They have authority over each other,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
There's there's legal and formal authority, and then there's just perceived authority.
It's a powerful statement to have an entire group of students walk out.
It is.
That's got like as a teacher or like, administrator or whatever, it's like that's got to hit you hard
It
seeing all your
does.
students just walk out.
But what do they do with that information? Do they
Mm,
evaluate why are we here? What are we doing to correct it? Why are we here right now? What's the issue? How do we impact? Do they have lots of issues of violence? I'm guessing they probably do because it takes a lot for kids to get that vocal unless there's some sort of agitation going on. But to get that organized and to take that kind of step typically takes a fair amount of stimuli, let's say that.
yeah.
And to get them all saying, okay, let's do it. I do think because there's a culture of this, it becomes easier and easier each time. But if the school is just letting them burn off steam and they're not doing anything about it, then,
Probably not recommended.
I mean, it's not helping any,
No.
right? So, and that's my point is when I say shared, it's incumbent upon the adults who have the legal authority and responsibility to make change, to prevent violence, to listen and help guide everybody to a solution, right? And when you just have that walkout or you have this plan that or this program that is being eliminated or restructured, then you have to ask yourself, especially in safety, we talked about this in pre-production, is okay, what are you going to do to take its place? Let's say you don't have the budget, right? Which was an indication. We lost, we're going to lose a bunch of money that was targeted towards these violence prevention programs. And so, you know, I think we both jumped to that conclusion that they were just going to eliminate these programs. But it looks like they're trying to restructure it and take more of it in house as opposed to contracting somebody else to solve their problem for them, which might
Yeah.
prove to be better use of whatever money it is that they're going to need to expend for that. But
I mean,
here,
it's probably gonna be cheaper, and maybe you'd have. I mean, I don't know how their program's set up. I don't know if they had other
yeah,
people come in or if they were utilizing the staff that was already there. Because I feel like if you're a student and you're in that program and you're in it with the staff that I feel like that would be.
yeah,
I
I
feel like you
don't
would
know,
connect better.
but let's take a wild guess. There's likely a program that teaches teachers how to teach violence prevention.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
sure.
So because you're in the school, right? So what do educators do for a living? They educate. They teach. If we are not teaching schools, staff, teachers, administrators, students how to implement violence prevention, how to identify it, how to intervene, how to address it, how to steer people in the right direction, if we're not teaching them how to do that, like physically how to do it and apply what it is they're being taught, then we're falling short. I say this, and I'm sure educators will not like this. There is a difference between teaching and learning. Oftentimes, we hear it all the time. We teach to test, we don't teach to apply. And we hear it all the time from the teachers who are frustrated with the way the systems are set up to measure success. It's all based upon these standardized tests. So we teach to the test. But if you ask the child how to do X math problem, then they can't necessarily do that, right? If you take it out of the testing realm and you tell them to solve this problem, they can't
Mm,
necessarily do that. And I'll tell you, I use that methodology quite a bit in my professional career. There were books on how to test for promotion every step of the way. If you wanted to be a sergeant, you went to the bookstore and you bought the sergeant's testing. And it literally took answers from tests. And we do this with the SATs and other standardized testing. You go, you buy the book, and it will tell you how to solve these problems. It will tell you that these are the answers to these problems. And I don't know if I was unique in this way. I kind of think I was, but I don't know. I realized pretty quickly that the standardized tests that were being used for promotions were being used over and over again. Not necessarily the exact same test, but the questions from different tests. So if you had 5 or 6 of these tests, you could figure them out. And so when I studied for these, I studied the right answers. That doesn't necessarily mean I knew the deal. I was studying to pass the test because
Yeah.
I needed to pass the test and move on to the next step. So it becomes problematic if that's what we're doing, because the application is what we're really trying to teach. So when you get into teaching our kids about violence prevention, we have to teach them how to prevent, not just say, hey, this is how you prevent it, and assume that they understand that's what it means. And
Yeah.
it's the same with school safety. And then I'll say this last piece is that anything in the realm of safety, if you choose not to spend money on it, you make a conscious decision not to spend money on it. That doesn't eliminate the need to have whatever it is you've chosen not to spend money on.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, like we were saying, if you can't afford a curriculum series or a specific curriculum, you can choose not to buy that particular one and you just don't have it. If you are paying for a violence prevention program, that does not eliminate violence. If you don't or you choose not to have an emergency communications platform, that doesn't mean you're not going to need to communicate. So the point of this is if you choose not to have a violence prevention program, a certified one you have to pay for, you still have to do something to prevent violence on your campus. What is it that you're going to do instead of? Because you're still responsible to prevent violence on your campuses. I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
If you're not buying the automatic locking doors to keep people out, what are you doing instead? Because you're still required to lock those doors. I'm not saying you need to buy this whiz bang deal that says you press one button and it locks all the doors. I've seen and heard of these districts that have programmed all of their locks to lock and unlock based upon the bell schedule. That is not cheap.
Wow.
Right?
What if
It's
the
a
kid
lot of money,
like late? What if they went to the bathroom?
but that's part of it, right?
Tough luck. You're out
Well,
in the
but
hallway.
but in many people's violence prevention program and behavioral intervention programs, they don't allow kids to go to the bathroom because of all the issues that are caused in the bathroom.
Oh, I guess you're
But
eliminating one problem and you might be creating
creating
another
another,
one.
yeah. I call this an engineering problem. You can't, you like an aeronautical engineer, they have an airplane, but they need to reduce the weight, right? You can take the heaviest part of the airplane and
Which
eliminate
is the
that,
gas tank.
the gas tank or the motor,
Fuselage.
right? Right? Or the motor. You eliminate it, but then your plane's not flying, right? But the issue comes in is if you're consciously making a decision about safety, something that has a direct connection to safety, you have to do something else to replace what it is that you're not doing. You just have to, because the mere fact that you said, I don't have the money for this, that does not eliminate your responsibility. You can't, this is one of the things that irritates me the most. We don't have the money. So I get it. What are you going to do? Well, we don't have the money. That doesn't relieve you of your responsibility to keep these kids safe.
But then you look at some of the websites and it's safety is our number one priority.
Yeah, I'm over that one. Right? But
Prove
I
it.
mean, prove it. The vast majority, and I've had this conversation with many superintendents, and where you say, I don't think there's a school district out there that doesn't say safety is one of our top priorities.
Yeah, in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's one of our top priorities. Okay, are you locking your doors? No, that's too intrusive.
And I heard
Right?
that exact thing recently in
Sure.
person.
Yeah.
It blew my mind.
We
It's
had
like, wait, what?
we had a high school campus that the principal lovingly referred to her school as 40 acres of freedom because there was no fence around it. People could come and go, including homeless, drunk people, people with mental health issues.
That
And
sounds
so,
not the school I would send my kid to.
but you can sit back and say, well, safety's not your priority then.
Right.
And I wasn't going to change that school in the short time that I was there, but I certainly made
Made some ripples.
recommendations. Recommendations. But when you're talking about fencing in 40 acres, that
It's
becomes an expensive deal. So maybe you don't fence in the entire 40 acres. You start with a segment or access points or whatever. I had a similar thing where the school wanted to just lock a gate that led to one part of a neighborhood, came into the school, and they wanted to lock that gate. And the parents were in an uproar because that forces those parents to walk all the way around the neighborhood to get to the front of the school. And, from my perspective, I said, okay,
wham.
that's a non-issue for me, right? But it was a huge deal,
Oh, man.
and I had to talk to the PTA about it. So when I talked to the PTA, I said, this is the reason. And they said, well, that's, how inconvenient that is? I said, safety is inconvenient. You have to go through TSA. You have to go to a certain point that's not the closest route to your gate. You have to go up one way up and then back, right? So it just becomes, well, what are you willing to do for safety? Do you want me to keep your kids safe or not? I don't. It's not my kid. My kids are out of school, but it's just, what are you willing to do for that? There you go.
So let's move on to the next part
Mm-hmm.
of our podcast here. So you mentioned it before that it's so interesting because I'm pretty sure you said this in the first season of our podcast that you always kind of give schools kind of that warning of like, hey, make sure you're paying attention to after the holidays because this is typically all the kids that have felt isolated or bullied or whatever. They're expecting that the new year is going to be like this new thing and that it's
Mm-hmm.
a new resolution, and then if they go back to school and it's the same thing that they were dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
they very quickly kind of move up the steps in that pathway to violence, or are
Yeah.
more likely to anyways. I'll admit I used ChatGPT, but I use it in the way of just kind of as a research tool.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of helped me put together this little document about all of the acts of violence or school shootings, and then there was even mentions of different times of student suicide. It was actually quite a bit. So I did it over the last 10 years. So I'll just briefly mention the different dates. So like this is from 2014 to 2024. We've got January 2014, a 12-year-old opened fire in a gym, injuring classmates. January 2017, 17-year-old brought a shotgun to school, shooting a peer. January 2018, in Kentucky, a 15-year-old killed 2 students and wounded 14 others in a hallway shooting. January 2020, a 16-year-old student shot and killed a peer during ROTC class. And then the one that we've covered a few times is January 2023, a 6-year-old shot his teacher in a class. So within that same kind of time period with the suicides, you had January 2015 in California, A bullied 15-year-old died by suicide shortly after a school confrontation. In January of 2017, a 15-year-old took his life outside of his high school before class. January 2018, in DC, a 12-year-old girl died by suicide in her school dorm room. 2019, Kentucky, a 10-year-old boy repeatedly bullied took his own life at home. And then January 2024, a 14-year-old student died by suicide in a school restroom after bullying.
So there's lots of activity there, right? And it's all between this sort of month and a half between mid-December to end of January, right?
I should have given a little bit larger of a parameter. I probably should have gone into February, but all I did was 1 month. I did it from January 26th to like the end of January, December 26th.
What's been happening, as far as I understand it, is that kids will do one of two things. If they're potentially going to enter the pathway to violence, or they're currently on the pathway to violence, they look at this time frame before holidays, and it's not just the Christmas break or the winter break. It happened. We see an uptick in shootings after 3 or 4 days of whatever. So spring break, we see it. A summer break, we see it. It's within that first week or two, sometimes the day after they return. I don't know the psychology behind it. I don't know the difference in the actual steps in specific cases. But generally speaking, there's two things that happen from my understanding. The first one is that they're already down this pathway, they're well down there, and they take this time to fortify their plans, to finalize their plans, and because they have this period of isolation where nobody's going to bother them. And the longer that isolation, like during summer, they have this time to sort of self perpetuate their despair and their plans of action, right? So when they get back to school, they're ready to go. And we've talked about leakage, right? And the significance it is, at least to me, in identifying that where they're at on that pathway. Leakage is, to me, one of the things that means that you have a severe problem, a high level threat, and you need to act soon, to me. Oftentimes, we look at the act as something separate from leakage. But I think psychologically, I'd love to hear some psychologists' opinions on this. But psychologically, the reason you have leakage is they're so excited. They're getting close to their end goal. That they just can't contain it anymore, right? And they'll do a post, they'll write about it, they'll draw pictures and things depicting an illustration of what they think is going to happen or what they want to happen, etc. They'll talk about it. They drop hints. Hey, don't go to school on Monday. Blah blah blah. Right? We've talked a lot about leakage. To me, the act itself is the final point of leakage. They're so excited they can't contain themselves, and they can't contain themselves to the point that they're actually doing it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So they have no more. They have zero ability to self-modulate themselves and hold themselves back. They can't do it anymore. It's time. It's time to go. This is going to happen. They're so committed to it. So that's the first reason. So they're back there and they're really trying to finalize, refine, solve all of their issues. And then they say, okay, it's time to go. The second reason is they might be committed, but they do have some ability to regulate their emotions. So they're willing to give it one more try. Maybe things have changed. Maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. Maybe that person who's bullying me won't bully me anymore. Maybe they'll just get tired of it and they'll move on. Like probably my parents are telling me, or my counselors, they'll get tired of it. They'll move on. They'll stop doing it, et cetera, et cetera. Then they go back and it happens. They might have had a conversation beforehand. They might have been identified beforehand that they're on this pathway. And they're trying everything in their power to resolve this with some other solution other than violence. And they're giving it all they've got. And then they, after this period of time where they've been isolated, they haven't been bullied, they haven't been exposed to any of this other stuff, they come back then that Monday or that next day, and it all starts all over again. And then they go right back to where they were prior to the holiday. Let's just give it one more try. I've been doing that for 6 years. At some point, I have to take care of this because I can't handle it anymore. So that's why we have this time. But this was identified by the FBI pretty early as a particularly vulnerable time for our schools, is when people come back to school, that we have to be more vigilant. And so I do think we have to be aware of it. We're getting into that season. For many years, long before Columbine, our suicide rates went up during the holidays.
Yeah.
Universally across the population, society, during the holidays, because people want to be involved with the holidays. They don't get what they think they should be getting, whatever that is, whether it's emotional support, inclusion. They don't get the presents that everyone else is getting, whatever there's a million different reasons. Suicide has always been a concern. Ever since I started law enforcement, that's always been a concern of ours. Our attempted suicide calls went way up. Our check the welfare calls went way up on people who were disgruntled, despair, all of these different issues. And then we started talking about violence, school violence. And we talk about the homicidal thing. And I started talking about there is a very short bridge to cross, especially nowadays, between somebody who is suicidal and becoming homicidal, that same person. So this is a time of the year that we have to be very vigilant. We have to be talking to people. We have to be providing positive support. We have to be identifying those people. We talked about this before too. Sometimes we just need to say, hi, how are you doing? Just acknowledge their existence. There's this great sweatshirt that's going around.
I already know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's, the world is a better, to the person behind me. I forget what they're actually called, but to the person behind me, the world is a better place with you in it, right? And the stories that are coming out about that sweatshirt, and that message was just what somebody behind them needed to hear, needed to see, whatever, have communicated to them.
One of my wife's relatives has that, and she came over and I read that. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I like that one.
It is. I mean, it's a simple t-shirt. The person wearing it understands what it is, but the person wearing it isn't saying, hey, you over there, it's the world's a better place with you in it. Have a good day. They're not saying that. Somebody is just reading that on a sweatshirt, a printed message on a sweatshirt, and they're saying that's exactly what I needed. Thank you for doing that.
Like, I don't know if it gets any more simple than that.
Well, than that, right? Right. And so now extrapolate that out, that if we actually make a personal, connection with somebody by saying, hey, how are you doing today? Right. And when they say, yeah, I'm all right. Are you? Just all right? Right? Does, men are historically, notoriously, whatever you want to say, hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. What does that mean? Does that mean you're actually okay? Because that's a legitimate answer. Yeah, I'm fine. You having any issues? Nope. Or, yeah, I'm fine. Are you? Well, I'm struggling a little bit.
Yeah, see, if my wife says I'm fine, that's usually means danger.
That means you're in trouble. But understanding how
Yeah.
people respond in situations. I hate to bring left the bang up into this, but
No,
because
you
I bring
don't.
it up,
You love to break it up.
that's
Don't
true.
lie.
That's true. Because you have to understand the baseline,
Yeah.
right? And when you're trying to establish the baseline, what is on an individual basis, if you understand what that person's individual baseline is, because you see them day in and day out, you will notice very quickly when there is a difference in their behavior, their mood. Hey, what happened? How was your weekend? You're in a crappy mood today. Somebody who's normally upbeat, right? Or vice versa. Somebody who is Eeyore, depressed, always has a little black rain cloud following them around. Then all of a sudden, they are through the roof. Everything's glitter and unicorns, right? Rainbows and unicorns. And everything is great. How are you doing today? Fantastic. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you that way? You're not usually this way, Eeyore, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just understanding why there's a change is significant, right? And, you know, and that's what we have to look at. That's when we start talking about establishing thresholds on and left of bang, that's what we're talking about. If you see a change in this person's behavior, let's figure out why. Good or bad, let's figure out why. Because sometimes when you have a Eeyore walking around and then all of a sudden Eeyore is Tigger, everything is great, happy, bouncing around, everything is good. Maybe there's a substance issue that they're trying to deal with it. Maybe they've resolved their problem. And when I say
Or they
resolve their problem is they've determined what their solution is.
right.
And this is the path that I'm going. I am okay with it. I understand that my life is not going to be normal. I am always going to be bullied. I am always going to be a victim of something. So I have this solution that is pending, right? I'm just saying. It's the change that we have to really be concerned about.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's just all about just taking the time. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, just taking the time to do that. To say hi, to say, "Hey, what's going on? What's different?"
Right. Yeah. So the interesting and going back to the pathway to violence, which I never talk about either, is you know, and many people who listen to this and have heard me speak, I've modified the pathway to violence, right? And when you did this, it validated to me the need to identify victimization. And because the significance of the pathway is, as it's traditionally known, is the first step is the grievance. But when they define what the grievance step is, they are defining victimization. They are actually defining what victimization is that causes the grievance. And when we were in pre-production, this was a significant thing for me because it validates the need to identify the victimization. And all of those times, all of those incidences, those little micro behaviors and incidences that cause us to move to the next step.
Mm.
And I think identifying the first step on the act or the pathway to violence as grievance is doing a disservice to the lay person, the people who don't understand that the victimization, real or perceived, is out there. And again, we talked about this part of it and why victimization is important in today's context. And that is we have a society who embraced, maybe that's not the right terminology.
Adopted.
Being, what's that? Accepted. They celebrate being victims.
Yeah.
I'm a victim here. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. We have this whole victimization mentality that if something is going wrong, we are a victim of it. We have no responsibility for it. It's somebody else who's victimizing me. So one would ask, or one should be asking, what's wrong with that? Because it's the first step in the pathway to violence. That's why. If you are looking at and you accept the validation that victimization is the actual first step of the pathway to violence, and you then ask yourself, why are we seeing more violence in schools? And then you look at how everyone is celebrating being the victim. I am a victim of whatever policy, situation, upbringing, education. I'm a victim of whatever. Whatever is going wrong in my life is not my fault. It's that I'm a victim. At some point, people start to look for a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking for a solution and you're a victim, what do you have to do?
Worry.
You have to take back the power.
Yeah.
You have to stop being a victim. And the power that you seek generally at some point either comes with your asserting some sort of power and having somebody else back down or what have you, or you look at a group of people that symbolize your victimizer and you create a solution. Generally speaking, it's very difficult for the individual to assert power over a group. So you need an equalizer to do that. What is that? Violence, some sort of violence, right? And it's a shame.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to accept that victim role. It's much more difficult to say, hey, I'm not a victim here. I'm in charge of myself. I can move forward. And you can save yourself from that by disregarding and moving forward and not claiming victimhood, not claiming that trophy. I'm a victim. Right. And we do. And I would say it goes all the way down to athletics and stuff. Right. And the participation trophy is it's not your fault you didn't get a trophy. It's not your fault you lost. It's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. Let me just give you a trophy here. And then it starts with feelings and making them feel good and not telling them how to resolve their shortcomings. Problem solving, critical thinking. If you talk to our educators today, you talk to employers, potential employers today, our up and coming generations can't solve problems.
Nope.
They're entitled. They can't think critically. In many cases, you see it all the time, anecdotally on social media, where there are some employers who are refusing to employ people of these last couple generations. How old are you? Nope. What generation do you identify with? Nope, we're not hiring you.
Can
Not
they
doing it.
like actually do that though? It's not like ageism or something like that.
No experience. No, I mean,
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean,
because you theoretically, right? And I can employ. So currently, age discrimination only applies to people 40 and older.
okay.
So if you, I mean, there are thousands of people that are applying for single positions. And so you have to weed those down into people who generally fit the person that you want. And right now,
Yeah.
Entire generations. If you stereotype these most recent generations, it's I want to make a quick buck. I want to start at top salary. I don't want to have to work more than is implied.
20
I
hours a
saw
week.
one thing that was interesting is that, and this was on one of the social medias. It had an employer talking to an employee. It was a cartoon,
Mm-hmm.
and it said the employer said, "Hey, Jimmy quit the other day, so I need you to take up the slack a little bit." And the employee said, "Oh, okay, great. Am I getting paid more?" No. Well, I'm doing two jobs. So shouldn't I be getting paid more for it? No, the employer says. No, I just need you to pick up the slack till we can find somebody else. But you're not paying me more for it. And I'm doing more work. So you can see the logic there, right? And that's the way current generations think. The employer is thinking, wait a second, I pay you for 8 hours. Sure, this is your primary function here, but I'm asking you to do this as well. I'm not asking you to stay any longer. I'm asking you to just cover and make sure that this part doesn't go to crap while we're doing it. But you can see the entitlement. Wait, uh, if you stay longer and you work harder longer, I understand the logic. But if I'm not, as an employer, I'm not asking you to stay any longer. I'm just asking you to do this. Here's a stack of this. Just get through this while we look for a replacement. Then I I don't want that guy.
Mm.
I don't want the second guy as an employer, right? We talk about that all the time in offline conversations. Why didn't they do that? Why didn't and that's not my job. Yeah, it's not your job. But you're working for a company who employs you. Are you really working nose to the grindstone 8 hours a day? Breaks and lunch excluded. Get that. Are you really doing your best work all of the time? Or do you have some capacity? I don't have any capacity for that. This is where I get into when we talk about bringing it back to the school safety aspect of it is, and we'll have to leave it with that. But when you bring it back to I get very frustrated with time and money are two big excuses for not doing safety. Time and money. Really? Really?
Both of those can be solved with just adjusting your priorities.
That's right. And again, I think we've let our educators and specifically our administrators, our district administrators, off the hook too easily. What do you mean? You have zero time for the safety of your students. You have zero budget. That makes zero sense to me. So I think we have to look at specifically around the holidays, one, being vigilant, two, how do we intervene and how do we help? How do we make it our responsibility, our obligation? How do we accept it internally, internalize it to us and say, okay, I'm going to make our school safer. Me as an individual, I'm going to do this. I'm going to watch these kids. I'm going to start understanding and establishing that baseline. I'm going to make time to make you safe. I'm going to help try to find budgets. I'm going to identify my gaps so that we can have a strategic plan to fill those gaps, either by process, by system, by policy, or by money. I think we got to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
I think we have to.
These kids got to feel safe. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.